Right. Hey. Let me know if you can hear me all right. There's a little bit of a delay. Looks like we got that usual 20 seconds. This keyboard fixed. Good morning from Australia. It's currently 8:55 a.m. It's really, really cold here in Sydney. By really cold, I mean probably not cold compared to wherever you are. But I feel cold. Anyways. Good. 5 out of 5 on the sound. Thanks, 4K. Now you know the delay because I just saw your text appear and I said that. I think it's about 20 seconds. All right, cool. So today's plan, get this set up. I'll put this here. I'll put this here. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to do explosions. I'm going to edit the title so that everyone knows what's going on. Let's see. Maybe live recording. Explosions. Public. Yep, it's all good. And we'll change the thumbnail to, sorry, I should have set all this up beforehand. Just give me a second. Where is it? There it is. Open. Save. There we go. All right, sweet. Cool. All right. So yeah, we're gonna do some explosions. Sorry, I've been kind of silent this week. I haven't really been around. I've been super busy with normal work, so contracts have been really busy this week. So just been trying to push through all that. Had some late nights, couple of weekends, a lot of hectic stuff. So finally getting some of those jobs wrapped up. So hopefully be able to ramp things up again with the channel. I'm hoping to eventually get a week here where things get really quiet with contract work and be able to do like a big week of streams or something fun like that. I want to catch up and get like a lot of stuff recorded because we're getting a bit of a backlog, a lot of stuff that I know I need to do that I've got planned that I want to do, and I'm pretty excited about jumping into. So anyways, that'll be coming up really soon. I'm getting really bad stream quality. Let me just exit out of close Dropbox. And hey Jacob, I'm going to be doing some explosions. Hopefully these are going to be really fun explosions. I just jumped on and started streaming before I had everything set up, so I'm just kind of doing my setup now, hanging out. Just checking my network usage. Oh, thank Bastion, appreciate it. Glad you're liking the stuff. Let's see, what's using all my network? OBS, that's fine. Yep. And that's fine. The rest of this stuff, yeah, it's all good. Nothing's downloading. All right. Okay. Okay, we should be good. Let me know. I'm getting, like, as usual, I'm getting lots of, like, you know, red flags and warnings and stuff popping up all over my screen saying that the stream quality is not good enough. So just let me know if it's bad. Just chat out in the chat. Okay, so here's the plan. We're gonna do explosions. I've been playing around a little bit with this because I wanted to do some messing around kind of off stream to see if I could figure some of these things out, get some plans in place. Because I wanted to try and find an efficient way for us to use explosions and use, you know, the whole Mantaflow thing, which is pretty exciting stuff. But it can be really frustrating, and there's a lot of things that are gotchas that are kind of hiding there that can really mess you around and make you feel, I don't know, like you've got no idea what's going on. So I wanted to try and tease those out and then find solutions for them. So I've been able to figure out a few things. It's not perfect, but it'll be good enough, I think, for what we need to do. And then I wanted to figure out how to like speed things up. So how can we get it so that we can use explosions quickly, easily in Eevee without slowing down our machine. And like volumetrics and stuff, they're really, really intensive on a computer. So, but I think I've got some good solutions. So just getting my coffee in my system. If you have any questions, throw them in chat. I'll keep popping in and checking on chat and answering stuff. When I'm doing the record stuff, I'll be ignoring chat. But I stop a lot. So feel free, throw questions in there. If I don't say anything about it right away, I'll catch up. Same with the super chats. If you do a super chat and I don't say anything, just don't worry about it. I'll get to you soon enough. And thank you for that. Really do appreciate the support of the channel. Also want to mention that the Blender Market sale has been extended. So if you haven't picked up Particle City yet from the Blender store, we got the asset pack and stuff from that, which is really exciting and fun. Anyways, it's 25% off right now until I think Sunday US time. So if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. And of course, the Patreon and all the other amazing ways to support the channel. And if throwing money at me is not what you want to do, subscribing and hitting the like button, that's huge. So if you do that, really, really appreciate it. That really goes a long way to helping the channel grow and stuff. So thank you very, very much. I'm having a lot of fun. We hit 4K subscriptions, so that's pretty exciting. All right, let's get started. I'll start off the recording in the big screen, and then we'll jump into Blender. Let me just get that going. All right, cool. Here we go. Let's do it. Hello and welcome to another exciting Blender tutorial. I'm Chris Bailey, and today we're going to be creating explosions. Let's do it. Okay, so today's plan is we're going to be making explosions. We're going to be trying to, I'm going to break down the MantoFlow system for you in a way that's, I guess, easy to work with. There are so many features and options and things you could do. And with any kind of simulation, one of the biggest problems is you could waste days just running your simulation over and over again, tweaking tiny little values, trying to see what's doing what, and if anything's having any effect whatsoever. And it can be really confusing and frustrating because sometimes you get results that you're not expecting. And anyways, I'm really hoping that I'm going to be able to boil it down for you so that you've got the essentials, you know exactly what you need to jump into to get something up and running. And also a little bit that you can actually understand what is going on so that you can begin to mold and shape your own, fire and smoke in MantoFlow and Blender a lot easier. Then what we're going to do is we're going to try and optimize it in a way that we can get it to work really quickly and have really fast explosions in Eevee. So got some cool tricks up my sleeve. Can't wait to share it with you. Let's jump into Blender and get started. All right. Hey, Markham. Thanks for joining, mate. Congratulations on hitting 20,000 subscriptions. I saw that the other day. You popped up to 20K. That is amazing, man. Well done. You've been working on that for a long time. It's good to see. It's encouraging for me because I look at that and I go, okay, I can hit 20K too if I just keep at it. All right, here we are. Explosion time. We're gonna start with a fresh scene. Okay, so here we are in Blender. Now, what we're gonna do is we are going to get rid of our light. See that? I didn't delete the default cube. Aha, gotcha. I just deleted the default lamp. I'm tricky today. You gotta look out. You gotta look out. Things are gonna get dicey. I'm gonna lock my camera to view. I'm just gonna go ahead and set up my camera so I've got, a camera in my scene. We might need it later. Set this up like that. And all right, let's get going. All right, so I'm gonna take my default cube. Now there's a couple of things that are essential for an explosion, okay? Just specifically explosions, right? So we need two main things. We need to have the thing that is generating the fire, so our inflow. It's the thing that's flowing the, fuel into the scene, whatever. And then we need to have the domain, which is the region that our simulation takes place in. Okay, those are the two key things. They're two separate elements, and they work together to create an explosion. Okay, now explosions, the stuff, fire and smoke works in Eevee and it works in cycles. There's a couple of tricks with both of those, but we'll cover that stuff in a second. So I'm going to take my default cube and I'm going to scale it up. And this is going to be my domain, but we're not going to worry about that just yet. So I'm just going to hide that. Let's go ahead and make a Shift A UV sphere. All right, so what we want to do is we're going to try and emulate the way an explosion looks in Star Wars. That's my goal, right? So Star Wars, an explosion, it's like a white burst with a lot of like yellowish white sparks. It's kind of this, it goes up. Now we're in space, right? So naturally, there's not a lot of oxygen. There's oxygen probably inside of the spaceship when it blows up. So you're going to get some kind of, fire consuming that gas that happens, but it's probably also a lot of other gases. You can get weird colors. And I'm just going to put it out there now because I know we're going to get this in the comments. We're not going for realism. All right. So I'm so sorry. This isn't going to be a real world explosion in space. I'm probably even going to add sound effects. All right. I just want to apologize up front. I'm going to do sound effects in space. I hope you're okay with that. As you've noticed in the video so far, we already have sound effects. So clearly our version of space has gas and stuff in it so that we can get sound waves. And anyways, so now we got that out of the way, let's get started. So I'm going to create a particle system onto this. Now, there's two ways you can drive a smoke and explosion simulation, right? You can create the settings just straight up in the physics tab, right? And set up things so that you get a burst of fire or whatever. But you can also use it to drive, and that's being driven by the mesh, right? The mesh of your object. So you can emit fire from the mesh of your object, basically, is what I'm saying. So if you have like an animated thing that's moving around, you can turn it into a flaming ball of fire, which is always a good idea. Or we could use particles. So you can send out a particles simulation, and then those particles are the ones that generate the fire. So it's the same thing, right? So it's either mesh generating the fire or it's little tiny particles generating the fire. Both ways it's the same. You have an object in your scene that's creating fire. When that object dies or is turned off, the fire goes away, okay? When it's alive, you're getting flames. That's the gist, all right? So we're gonna use a particle because we wanna be able to control that burst, that sort of explosive burst, and we want it just to be like a momentary thing, just like a flash in the pan, right? So that's how we're gonna use particles. So with my sphere, I'm gonna go ahead and create a plus there on the particle settings to get a new particle. I'm also gonna rename my sphere, and we're just gonna call this emitter. And we want to get an explosion that works, right? So I'm going to keep all this stuff the same for right now, except I'm going to change the end frame to 2 because I want this to explode on frame 1. So emit, remember how it works. You have your number of particles. This is the total number of particles that are going to be emitted from this object in your scene over the course of the lifetime of each particle and from the start and end frame that you've set. So we're in this case, because we've set 1 and 2, it's going to emit 1,000 particles in that one frame between these two right here. Okay. If we were to change this to 200, it would emit 1,000 over those 200 frames. Hope that makes sense. Okay. So we've got one burst of sparks, but of course it doesn't really look like an explosion yet because it's just, falling down. So we need to give some velocity to this thing. So again, the normal is the direction that each face on this polygon is facing. So by saying the normal of a normal velocity of 1 millisecond or meter a second, it means it's going to fire out from the direction of these faces, which we're emitting from the faces. So that's good. That's all working together. But let's turn this up to like 25, 30 maybe. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So there's a nice explosion. Very even explosion though. You can see the grid pattern of our sphere. And that's because we're emitting, if you're right here to source, we're emitting from the faces and we've got even distribution ticked, which we don't want to do that. So we're going to turn off even distribution. And if you see, I can run it again now. It's going to look exactly the same because that does nothing. Let's go to random. And still not going to do it for us. If we do volume, it's probably going to give us a better result. No, still not doing it. Random order, even distribution. Let's try jittering amount. Still nothing. Look, this doesn't actually matter. We can get around this. Face maybe verts. Verts would be even more. Random order. Oh, that's right. Random order is the time. I think it's still going to be. Yeah, that doesn't work. So we need to do faces, and we could go for particles per face. We could turn this up a bit. Nah, look, these are all bad ideas. This is all the stuff I'm going to cut out of the video, by the way, if you haven't picked that up already. All right, anyways. We've got our explosion that doesn't look the way I want it to. Now, next thing I want is this really short lifetime on these things because I want the particle to kind of burst and then they need to go away, right? So let's just go like maybe 5 frames. See what that looks like. Boom. All right, so these things are only alive for these 5 frames. That means we're going to have fire for 5 frames and it's going to kind of turn away and go into smoke. Let's see. I'm going to do a couple of things. Let's randomize the velocity. So I'll put this to 30 as well. And that's going to really, that'll really create a lot of variation. So now they're shooting out at different speeds. different rates. I'm also going to change I'm going to change the lifetime randomness. I'm going to crank that all the way up to 1. And let's see what else. I'll give it a longer lifetime. And of course, because we're in space, you know, we should probably turn off gravity. So if we go down to field weights, turn off gravity. As you know, last time I actually kind of like using a bit of gravity even in space because it creates a nice arc, even though it doesn't make any sense. It looks good. And that's the goal with anything in 3D, is just to make it look good. All right. Cool. We got our burst. Now, let's keep going. Okay, so I'm gonna shrink this down a little bit more. That should be good. That should be good. All right. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to use our domain to turn this thing into actually fire and smoke. So let's do that. I'm going to take my cube. I'm going to unhide it. And you can see it's pretty big. We've scaled it up, but we're probably going to need to go even bigger. I'm going to call this domain. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come to this magical tab right here, the physics properties. And I'm going to click the fluid tab. So don't be confused. Fluid is any kind of fluid motion. So smoke, water, fire, all that stuff's classified as fluid. So we'll click that. And we're going to... There we go. I'm reconnected. Sorry about that. Hang on. All right, let me know if we're back, when we're back. Got all kinds of things. I've got my light is flashing above me, my bulb's going. I've got the stream dying. My internet's spotty. It's a great day. Okay. Just check everything. Yeah, we're still good. Okay, I'm assuming you're all still there. Let me know in chat if you can see me and hear me. If I don't see anything in the next minute, I'll start to panic. All right, cool. So you can see with the type, we've got all the different types. We've got flow, we've got domain, we've got effector. So all these are different, basically it's just these three things. So domain is the region in which our explosions contain. Flow is the thing that brings the fire in or brings the smoke in or brings the water in. And the effector is a thing that, you know, can affect it. So we're not going to worry about effectors in this particular one, but worth playing with. Okay, so we've set this thing to domain, and you can see the image has changed, right? It's given us this giant cube and then a tiny cube in the corner. The tiny cube represents the resolution of the simulation. So basically, each cube is the size of one of the voxels. So if you've ever played Minecraft, each little cube is a voxel, right, in that game. And you know, you get a mountain made of a certain size voxel, right? So you got these like blocky look. So our explosion is going to have a blocky look, and each block's going to be about this size. If we change the resolution division, so we go to 64, let's say, you can see that little cube just shrunk down a whole lot. So you can see now that the explosion is going to have a lot more detail, a lot more resolution. So that's just a handy little thing to look out for. If you make it like 12, it's really big, whatever. But we're going to keep it set to 32 for right now, just to start with, okay? Now, we want to set the domain to gas. It's automatically on gas, so we're not doing a fluid, not doing water, so we don't need liquid. And the rest of this stuff we can leave. Now, this is going to be a common theme today with this tutorial. There are a lot of settings. There are a lot of settings. All of these things do all kinds of different stuff. And dynamics is one of those things you just need to play with over time and build up a tool set of, I guess, tricks. You know that this button will do this thing in this situation. And it just takes time to experiment. But what I want to do is give you that foundation that you're able to then just jump in and do this kind of stuff and experiment without feeling like you don't know what's going on, okay? So we're just going to focus on the essentials and how do we get to where we want to go today. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go to my emitter, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click the fluid button, and I'm going to go here instead of domain. We already have a domain. We're going to say flow. Now, we haven't connected these two, right? I haven't done anything to connect this domain to the emitter, but because... Well, I'll preface this by saying I don't actually know the reason why these things are connected, but I've got two assumptions. One is This one's inside this one, so that's why it's connected. The other one is that you can only have one of these in a scene, right? You can only have one domain. I haven't experimented with that. You might be able to have more than one domain, but I'm pretty sure you can only have one domain. And whatever you do, whatever you set to this fluid thing is going to want to behave within that domain. So there's nothing you need to do to link these things. It's just automatically going to be doing that for you. Okay, so this one, what we're going to do is we're going to take the flow type and we're going to go fire plus smoke. Okay, you could do any one of these, but we're going to go fire plus smoke. And the flow behavior with any of these things too, if you hover over them, you get the tooltip, which tells you, you know, what it does. But we want to go inflow, and this is going to actually, it may not matter in our particular case. Only use given geometry for fluid. That's true. Inflow. Yeah, we probably don't need inflow, do we? I always just do inflow, but now that I'm here in front of you guys, I'm thinking it may not be necessary. I just leave it at geometry and we'll see what happens. Yeah, anyways, let's come down to flow source. All right. So the next little tick here is this flow source section. We're going to drop that open. And we want to switch this from mesh, because right now the flow source is the mesh of the sphere, but we want it to be the particle system, right, that we created. So we tell it we want to use a particle system. It's going to ask us for which particle system. We only have one on that, so we're only going to have one option here. So we'll fit that there. And we're going to leave all this stuff here as well for now, okay? So now all we've done is we've turned on the fluid smoke simulation for both of these things. And we've set it to fire and smoke, and we've set to use the particle system. So that's it, right? That's all we've done. Now, let's go back to the domain. Now, one of the things that's a little confusing if you've never done this before is that most of your controls that control what happens with this smoke, how it behaves, are going to exist on your domain. So the domain type object is going to give you all these options. The flow type object is going to give you a lot less options. So you're not going to be in here very much. You kind of set this and you leave it. So what we're going to be jumping between is the domain controls and actually the particle system controls a lot. Okay, that'll be the two things that we're really playing with. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is scroll all the way down here. Now there used to be a bake cache button like right about here. That's not there anymore. And it can make things really frustrating because right now if we hit play, right, we're going to get a simulation sometimes. So I went back to the first frame there and you can see something appeared. If I hit play, right, we can see something's happening. It's definitely not beautiful and it's a little confusing. But one of the things that I find really spotty is if you keep it on this replay mode. Okay, I find it works way better if you just switch it to final. And what that's going to give you is it's going to give you this bake all button, which allows you to bake out the cache. Now it's going to save it to this directory. It's going to create a file here. Now this is actually going to be something you might want to use in another scenario. So what I like to do is instead of using the basic, default directory, I like doing 2 forward slashes and then giving this a name like cache and then that backslash. Now the 2 forward slashes means create this file folder in the same directory that this file is saved in. So this project file, which of course I haven't saved yet. So let me go ahead and save. Do that now. This is Epic Space Battles 11. Geez, Epic Space Battles 11. How long is this series? All right. So now that I've saved it in my project directory, this cache is going to be in that same project directory. Whenever I click bake all, it's going to create a series of folders. Okay, but I'll show you that in a second. Right now, don't worry about it. But whenever you want to preview your explosion, you hit this button. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit it. You can see it runs through. It's going to go, what here, the frame start and end buttons. So 1 to 50. So it's going to go to frame 50 and then it's going to stop. So there we go. Now I can play it. It's going to play a lot quicker. And I'll go ahead and set my timeline to end at 50 as well. It's going to play a lot faster. It's a lot smoother. And also I know that I'm seeing the actual simulation. All right. I'm not getting weird artifacts and I can also jump around in here freely and move my playhead. So it's just a much more stable way to iterate and try things out. So, all right, so next up. Yes, Bastian, you are right. I'm noticing the way the explosion looks that, yeah, inflow is definitely what we need to have set. So let's do that. Let's go to, all right, so whenever you want to make a change after you've baked, you're gonna have to click free all because it doesn't allow you to control anything or change anything once you've got this cache set up. So we're just gonna click free all. It's gonna delete that cache and we're gonna come back up. We can make changes. All right, so let's see. I want to, so first off, let's go back to emitter. And right here where it says flow behavior, we need to switch this to inflow. And that's going to allow this to behave. This is the, this adds fluid. I have no idea why this has to be set this way and why geometry doesn't work, but that's another issue. Okay, so let's go back. And with that change, we should have a different result. Let's just test it. Back in here, bake all. I might set my bake time to be a bit shorter so we don't have to sit here and wait 100 times for this. All right. Yes, that's way different result. Okay, so I've baked the explosion, and you can see it's looking cool. Definitely doesn't look good, but we're seeing stuff, which is a great win. Now you can see the size of our voxel, this box down here. You can see each of these little fire block kind of things. You know, they're about this big. Okay, so you can compare it there. So that's how you get that voxel size dimension thing that we got on the domain. So up here. This resolution division. So if we make that smaller, these are all going to get smaller. We're going to get more detail in the explosion. So that's how that works. Okay, so a couple things you can notice. First off, our domain is clearly not big enough because it hits the walls of the domain and stops there. We can change that. So what we're going to do is scale up our domain. So we can just click it. And with it baked, when we scale, it's actually going to scale the whole simulation. So it treats it as if it's like a geometry object. And that's actually kind of a cool thing. You could like duplicate these and move them around and have a few in your scene. It's a little unstable sometimes, but that's kind of cool. But anyways, as soon as we free this thing and bake it again, we'll see if we've made it big enough. So one more time. While that's baking, I'll say hi stream. Everybody in chat, feel free to throw questions in chat. I'll do my best to answer them. Okay. There we go. So now we've got a domain that's big enough. It's containing our entire explosion. Pretty cool. Okay. Now, right now, you know, you've got something, right? So right now we've got something that works, right? So we've got an explosion. It doesn't look very good. If we want to make it look better, we just need to be increasing the resolution division. So I'll go ahead and bump this up to 64. So I'll double it, and I'll show you what that looks like. Sorry, stream is going to be a lot of waiting for bakes in this episode. I'll cut all this out of the actual episode. Hope everybody's doing well. Good wherever you are in the world. Things are okay here in Australia. We're still on edge a little bit. Melbourne is in a very, very tough spot at the moment. So thoughts and prayers go to everybody in Melbourne, and same with Beirut too. If there's anybody here, that's such a sad story about that explosion there. So yeah, fun times. Hey. All right, here we go. Let's preview this. Boom, there we go. Okay, so by decreasing my voxel size, you can see that you're getting a more detailed explosion. It looks a bit better. There's a lot more we can do to make this even better, but better. Did you catch that? That was good. But we're not going to do that just yet. All right, so one of the things that you might do at this point is you go, cool, I love this. I want to see what this looks like rendered, right? And you're going to jump over to Eevee, and we're going to do viewport shading. And you're going to go like, all right, well, how come I can't see this anymore? Because bam, there it is. And now it's gone. That doesn't make any sense. Why would it disappear when I switch to Eevee? Well, this is one of the things that frustrates a lot of people. Main reason is we don't have material on this. So you go, all right, I'm going to put a material on my smoke. So I'm going to come over to my emitter and I'm going to click new, and I've got a material, and I'm going to make it, you know, orangish, right? Because it's an explosion, but still not showing up. What's going on? Well, okay. The reason is, first off, you got to put the material in the domain. So the domain is the thing that needs the material. Okay, so this emitter doesn't need a material. And same with, you know, we're not even emitting any actual geometry. We're just emitting like, you know, particles that don't have any geometry. So they're not even showing up in our render. So we need to put a render on a material on the domain. So let's do that. Let's open this up. Let's go to the shader view. And let's go ahead and get this thing working in Eevee. So I'm going to click new, create a new material. And I'm going to switch to not the principled BSDF. I'm going to switch to the principled volume shader, which is specifically for volumes. Now, okay, I've just done that, right? So I put a volume shader on my domain, which is correct. And all of a sudden it's like, why is it not? What's going on, Blender? Like I put a volume shader on my domain. I've got a simulation. I can see it here. Well, one of the gotchas is that when you do this, Blender automatically creates a principled volume shader for you very conveniently and then connects it to the surface node input, the material output, which is incorrect. It doesn't work if it's connected to the surface. You got to connect it to volume, okay? And suddenly, bam, there we go. Okay, now the next problem is that looks horrible and that looks cool. So what's going on here? Why do we have these two totally different results? Well, some of you might even be zoomed out a bit further and you might go, it's still not appearing. What's going on? I've done this correctly. I've plugged this into the volume and it's still not here. Okay, so this is one of the worst things about this. Okay, so when you're building a domain, an explosion, often you're working in this mode, right? And when you're in this mode, you often find that your domain's not big enough, right? So you just keep zooming out and you keep scaling up your domain until you finally get your simulation working, and then you switch to Eevee and it all disappears. What you may not realize is if you have this all hooked up correctly, if you watch, if I scroll in, it's going to start to appear. In fact, we're going to see more and more of it. And that's because there's a draw distance limitation in Eevee for volumes that you have to change manually. So if you're zoomed out, it's just not going to be there, but it is there, which is just infuriating if you don't know what to look for. So anyways, hope I saved someone some headaches out there. Come over to your render settings, Eevee, we're going to go to volumetrics, and right here, start and end. This is how far away from the camera is this thing going to render. If I pop this thing up to 1,000, it's suddenly going to appear. There you go. Anyways. Okay, there's a few more gotchas. We'll get to those in a minute. All right. Here we go. And yeah, Bastion, follow along. Go for it, man. It'll be fun. If you can follow along with me, join in at home, everyone. It's like, I'm telling you, this is like the Bob Ross way of doing Blender. Okay. Now we've got this thing of smoke. The explosion, even the initial bit of the explosion doesn't look very attractive. It's just all of it's the same. Okay, so how do we begin to color this and shape it and make it look good in Eevee? Well, right here, there's a couple of different tools we can use. Black body intensity is one of the numbers that you can use to basically bring up the intensity of your explosion. Okay, I actually don't know the science behind what black body represents, but bring that up, and you can see now we're getting the initial bit looks like actual fire. You can also play with the temperature. So the temperature is, the hotter it is, the brighter it gets. Okay, so if I go ahead and turn on bloom, you can see we're getting that nice bloom. I can even take my world background and drop it to black. Now we can really see things. I'll even turn my floor off and my axis, so it's really clear. So there we go. You can see we're getting our smoke. You can really see the voxels as well. You can see how that really causes the simulation to break down. And now we're not seeing our smoke now, so I should add a little bit of color into our background. But anyways, we'll get more to this in a minute. So at least we've got it working now in Eevee and stuff. Now, we can also switch to cycles. So you can unless you do some other things, but I'll get to that. Okay, actually, I think I'll go ahead and cover that now because it's worth knowing. Yeah, well, actually, we probably want to wait because we'll cover attributes and stuff. Thinking. I don't know. I'll do these settings next. All right, so when you're in Eevee, there's a couple other settings you can use to tweak the quality of your explosion, right? So one of the things is right down here. So under volumetrics, we've got the start and end, which we've covered. We have tile size. This is basically how big, it's basically the same as this. How big is your voxel cube? It's a little bit different because your voxel cube is impacting the simulation and the actual mesh. This is impacting how much effort Eevee's going into rendering it, the detail. So if we switch this, the smaller the number, the smaller, it's just like in the same kind of concept, the smaller the box, the more detail you're getting in the object, because each little block of fire gets smaller. So if I switch this to 2, you're going to see we're going to get a lot more detail. Samples is how much resolution it's going to put into it in sampling the image. So it's the same as up here with these samples. It's kind of like you can tell it to do even more samples. And then you have volumetric lighting, which allows it to, I think, receive light. I don't think this has to do with actually lighting the scene. It's got to do with receiving. And then you have volumetric shadows, which allows this to cast shadows in your scene. If you don't have that turned on, it's not going to cast shadows. Now in cycles, if we switch over there, it's just going to give you like the best quality possible right out the gate. Eevee's focused on real time, so you can see we're still getting a real time simulation as well. So we can actually get this thing to play back in real time, which is cool. Okay, now let's get to making it look cool. I'm just going to check my recording. It's all good down here. Let's restart it. There we go. And start it up. Everybody having fun today? You enjoying this? Hope you are. Okay, we're recording again. Sweet. Good. Okay. All right. Now, let me think about what I want to achieve. I think we're going to play with these settings for a bit. Okay. Let's see. We'll do some of this stuff, I think. Oh, cool. Thanks, Paul. Glad you're enjoying it. Hi, Richard. Thanks for coming. Good to have you. All right. I'm going to go ahead and free my bake. Now it's time to start tweaking these numbers to make this thing look sick. Let's do it. All right. So one of the things that we've got is we're in space. Right. So our smoke and our explosion, it's not going to rise. Right. So right now it's exploding and then it rises because the temperature is greater than the surrounding air. And so because it's hotter, it rises. But in space, there is no air. And I know what I said earlier about, sound effects and stuff and fire and all that jazz, and, not worrying about it being real, but we want it to look, at least relatively like make some sense. One of the things that right here under gas, so again, we're not that far down, just come down just a little bit. We've got buoyancy, density, and heat. Both of these things have to do with how fast the simulation rises after it explodes. And then vorticity has to do with the amount of turbulence and rotation in the smoke. I literally just read you the tooltip. So you can get more twisty, kind of cool, this stuff going on inside it. So I'm going to bring mine down to 0.1, and I'll bring my vorticity up to like maybe 0.5. Okay. Now, typically when you're working in a simulation, what you want to do is you don't want to do what I just did. You want to tweak one number. Okay. So technically what I should have done is left these, right? And just gone here and go, okay, 0.1, buoyancy density. Let's see what that looks like. Run my simulation. Okay. And now I can make a decision about that number. Okay. Because I've seen it. You might do it twice. Watch it again. Okay. But I'm using my extensive Blender experience to magically tell me these numbers. The truth is, I actually spent about 3 hours yesterday playing with these numbers, and I found that this worked. So I'm just saving time. Yeah, that's what's going on. But anyways, so you know how to do that yourself. Just one at a time. Bake all, test, run the test again. Let's see what it looks like. Sorry, I don't have any background music. Need some elevator music for baking sims. Okay. Let's view this. I'm going to switch back to just that view mode. Okay, so you see now it's not rising up, right? It's kind of got this double thing going on, which is pretty cool looking. Probably have a look at it. If I turn the density down to 0, it actually gets rid of the smoke. So you can just view the fire. Although it's a bit deceptive. Yeah, this is another good thing to mention, actually. All right. So now in Eevee, I've got my render view set up and I'm watching this thing and I'm like, yeah, it looks pretty cool. But one thing that's important to know with Eevee is that it's actually showing you something a little bit different than what you're going to get at render time. And that's because it takes a little bit of extra time for it to process each frame than it's showing you. So if you go through frame by frame, you get a much better sense of what it's actually looking like. You can see how it does that extra bit of resolution. Like after you wait a minute, it pops and changes. Another thing too is if you take your density pertains just to the smoke. Okay, so if I drop the density down to 0, it's going to basically turn the smoke off, and now I can look at what it's actually looking like. And you can see here, this is how the fire goes away and disappears. So it kind of has this spotted look to it. If I play it, it's going to kind of freeze and fade. Do you see that? But that's not what it's going to look like when I render, right? It's actually going to look more like this. So keep that in mind when you're doing it. All right. Now let me think. What was another thing that's really good? These are all fine. Noise can be fun. Dissolve can be fun. I'll talk about those in adaptive domain. That makes sense. All right. So a couple other settings that are really worthwhile knowing about. You've got noise. Noise is fun. Noise basically just adds noise to the flow of everything. It also increases the resolution, so it upreses everything a little bit more, so it changes the size of your voxel. So bear that in mind. If you've already upped your res, this is going to up it even further. Basically, it's just going to add more, turbulent motion to your explosion. Another thing is dissolve. This allows the smoke to fade off. So sometimes you have an explosion and the smoke stays and it just rises up and hits the top of your domain and spreads out. If you turn on dissolve, it's going to actually fade away. So, but in our case, because we were doing this sort of, we've dropped our buoyancy heat and increased the vorticity and stuff, like it's just exploding and then fading out. So we don't really need it, I don't think. Looks pretty good. Adaptive domain, this allows the domain to basically change its size based on the simulation. It can save render time or save simulation time. It's probably worth us turning it on. It won't actually go bigger though than the maximum size that you've set your domain. So it only starts smaller and then expands out to that size. So if your explosion goes really big, you still need to scale your whole domain up to make sure it fits it. And you've got a lot more settings here in Fire. Again, all these different things. You can play with them one at a time to get a sense of it, but we're not going to worry about it so much right now because the main thing is about how do you get up and running. Now, let's see. I want to, I'm going to leave all that stuff. I'll show you another cool thing that you can do. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my cache. I'm going to free all. And I'm going to add something to this. I'm going to add an effector. So I'm going to hit Shift-A, come over here to Force Field, and I'm going to add a Turbulence force field. Now, as you know with physics simulations, you can add these effectors, and you have all these different types, and they all do really cool things. We're using them with the asteroids, to create the vortex, to get them to spin. Same kind of stuff can affect smoke. So with this set just at its default values, let's go ahead and bake the domain again and see what it looks like. Ugh, my throat's scratchy. I've been talking too much. Too many Zoom meetings. Anybody else having Zoom burnout? While we wait for that, thanks for joining the stream. Good to have you. It's always nice to do this with company. Feel free to throw any questions in chat. I'll do my best to jump on them. At the end of all this too, I'll stick around and we can chat a little bit if you'd like. All right, so now let's see what that noise did. Nothing. Oh no, something. Oh, that's right. We're not getting the actual. I got to switch to this. All right. So noise is adding a little bit of motion to it, especially at the end here. But not a whole lot at the beginning with the smoke. And that's mostly because this field is really affecting, well, it's really affecting the smoke, but the particles not so much, because the particles are, actually they could be driven by, maybe. It's a good point. Actually, I never thought of that. Yeah, anyways. So this field is basically adding a bit of turbulence now to our smoke as it rises up at the end. Now remember to jump into shaded view, viewport shading, to actually get a sense of what it's really looking like. Because again, if you're over here, you're just going to get like kind of a false read on what it's looking like. So I would really just stick with this mode for now until you're actually tweaking colors and stuff in your shader. Okay. Another fun thing to do is to go into your emitter now and actually play with the particle settings. So let's do that. Let's go and what do I want? I'm going to go here to Brownian motion. So Brownian motion's, you know, this erratic movement that you can put into simulations. Let's see. All right, so if we turn this up to like, I don't know, let's try 10 maybe. We actually just have a look at, if we hide our domain, we can have a look at the particles themselves and just have a look at the simulation. And another thing that might be cool is to add in a bit of damp to it, possibly. And dampening slows it down. So that looks kind of explosionist. That's cool. So I'm gonna slows down. Let's see what else we got. We can turn this up. So if we go to our physics tab, we can take the strength and turn it all the way up to like 40 maybe. And I might take my particles and take the life up a little bit, so they're on screen a little bit longer, maybe 15. So you can see there what this field is doing at the end. They're kind of like dancing around. That's pretty cool. So by turning up the strength here, we're getting like a lot of, a lot of weird movement. And it looks kind of cool. And that's what you want, because an explosion is kind of erratic. There's different areas, different pressure points where it's breaking through. All right, let's take a look at what the sim looks like. So I'll come back over to my domain. Back down here. Free all. And bake all. Here we go. Baking, baking, baking. I'm out of coffee. Out of coffee. Oh, well. Second cup already today. I try and cap at 3. Some days. Last night, I was up. so much. My son's 4 months old now, so he's waking up again. It happens. I got some cool ideas for what's next with the series. I'm thinking what we might do is we might kind of create a break in it and have like 2 parts. That's all that we've done so far is part 1. In part 2, we're going to use all the things we've built, like the explosions and the lasers and all that stuff, and just animate a bunch of shots and put the rest of the scene together. Because I'm thinking like we're not going to be making a lot, and like a lot of new elements. Like we're going to be using the elements we've already made. So we'll have some new stuff come up. But yeah, Paul, I do this for a living. So I make commercials, and I do like the opening of television shows in Australia. Like, yeah, just TV stuff. Animate, use Blender a lot in my work. So it's the only 3D package I use, actually. Okay, let's see what this looks like. There we go. Look at that. So now our explosion's looking really cool. Like that's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with that. And you can see that we got this really nice look pretty much by playing with the particle settings more than anything and adding this field effector. So when you just do a normal explosion, you've just set up the basic settings, you've got a simple particle system, it's going to look really dull and uniform, right? Because there's not a lot for the sim to work with, right? There's not a lot of atmospheric stuff or changes. And what happens in real life is there's tons of dynamics going on. There's air pressure, there's when it's exploding, there's places of structural weakness where it's bursting out more than others, and then there's debris, and then there's temperature fluctuations, and there's just tons of things going on that create such a dynamic environment for the fire to exist. So by adding something like a turbulence field, cranking it way up, and having a particle system that has some, Boyd's movement to it, or some whatever it's called, the erratic motion, playing with those settings a little bit, really be cool. Now, another thing you can do, we won't do it here, but you can actually use multiple emitters. So we could have a couple of particle systems and have them sort of emitting on top of each other. And that's how you can get like a really cool effect. We've got like a main explosion, and then you get like a secondary explosion. So you can have like a thing kind of thing, which is really, really pretty cool. Yeah. Now, of course, you can see we need to make our domain bigger. So we'll do that. Scale this up. Maybe to here. Again, remember, this is going to scale the whole the simulation up, but we can go down here. We just click free all and bake again. We'll see if that's big enough. Just getting back to your comments. Let's see. After Effects, yeah, mostly After Effects. Blender is definitely becoming more and more something I'm using a lot of. But that's mostly because I'm just getting more jobs to deal with 3D stuff lately. But I still do a lot of like standard stuff where it's simple animation, like 2D animation stuff. Like, yeah. After Effects is good because it's so one of the biggest problems of working like in the Blender compositor, for example, is there's no way to get real-time playback unless you render it out. So you can't like composite a crazy shot and then like cache that and then watch it in real time. There's no setup for that. There's some plugins people have made. People keep breaking every time they update it, and it just hasn't really been a focus. What's so good about After Effects is that you change the resolution of what you're looking at. So you can drop, you can have a really, really massive image, like a 4K image. You can drop the resolution of your composition you're working down to like quarter res. And what it does, you can then preview it faster. It's just able to downsample it live, and you can just get a much quicker real-time preview. And you really need that for animation. You need to be able to get to real time so you can see how it actually feels and moves. And that's mostly why I work in After Effects a lot. And that is standard in the industry, so it's what everyone uses. So you end up with situations where you need to have, a lot of. We still have, that's a lot of smoke. Should we go bigger? Sorry, I got sidetracked. Let's see. I'm going to turn my smoke down and just see. Does this explosion hit the walls? Kind of does. Tell you what, I'm going to. So I've made my domain even bigger, and you can see that we're still hitting the edges of the domain, but it might just be the smoke that's doing that. I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not too worried about smoke because we're in space and we're not going to have a lot of that. I don't know why we're not going to have a lot of it, but I'm not an astrophysicist. It just doesn't feel right. It's good enough. Okay. I'm going to turn on dissolve. What that's going to do is it's going to make the smoke dissolve really quickly. So it's at 5, so in 5 frames the smoke dissolves. So that's what's going on here. Here we go. Yeah, okay, it's similar to that idea of like mold things. Except that's really sad what happened. I can't believe it. It was really shocking when I saw the news. Can you imagine happening in your own town? Like it's unexpected, and really kind of similar stockpile of the same kind of thing that ignited there up in Newcastle, which is a city. I wasn't worried about that naturally, but makes you wonder how many places do we have stuff like that. You know, it's really tough. Oh no, Paul, thanks for letting me know that the video gets choppy. I'm not surprised. It's taking all of my machine. There we go. Okay, so I've turned on dissolve and I've run the sim. And what that does basically just means the smoke will dissolve over a course of 5 frames. So if we have a look at what that looks like, yeah, you can see that the smoke doesn't blast out and fill the space anymore. It kind of just bursts and dissolves, which is cool. That's kind of what we want because we're in space and I don't really feel like we need smoke. So anyways, this is looking good. Oh, okay. So everything I said was garbled while we were in. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was basically just saying. I was talking about how sad it was about what happened in Beirut, and yeah, just trying to be empathetic towards. Just trying to imagine like what it would be like if it happened in my town. Like it's just so unexpected. It must be such a disruption and such a scary thing to have to go through. You know, for all those people, it's really really sad. Especially on top of everything else that's going on. You know, it's like everyone doesn't need the extra stress. It's yeah, it's heavy. All right, so it's pretty good. Feels a bit slow to me, but I'm not too worried about it. Okay, so we've got a working explosion, and let's switch over to our Eevee render and just have a look at it. Looking really nice with all the bloom and stuff. It's really really cool. All right, so now the next thing we need, well, there's a couple things. There's color, and then there's also the sparks. You know, in Star Wars, we get this big burst of sparks. Let's go ahead and make the sparks happen. I'm actually going to take my emitter, and I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to go Shift-D to make another one. This one, I'm going to turn off the fluid sim. So I'm going to hit this little X here just to delete the fluid sim off of it. And this one, I'm actually going to create an object to be a particle. So I'm going to go over here to UV sphere, and I'll just grab it off an emission material. So I'll set that to emission, and strength, I'll make it, I don't know, 100, let's say. Yeah, cool. Scale it down a bit. And then I'm going to come over to my emitter, go to my particle settings. I'm going to click the number 2. So this is a new particle system. And I'm going to come down here to render and select object and select this sphere. There we go. And scale randomness, I'll turn up. And I'll take the lifetime and I'll turn up the lifetime to like 20 maybe. And I think I'll increase my velocity to 40. Now, what the trick with this is I'm going to need to get these guys to explode bigger than the explosion. So I need to take the drag off, I think. So let's do that. Still not enough. Let's increase to 100 with our velocity. Boom, still not enough. Let's take our lifetime, bring it up to 50. Oh, there they are. I think maybe the particles are just too small. So let's bring them back up in size. I'll just make them 1 so I can see them. There you go. Now remember, we're looking at this in Eevee right now. So that freeze frame where it freezes and then fades, that's not how it's actually going to look in our render. It's going to look like this. Okay, which is much cooler. In fact, if we switch over to this view, we'll probably get a sense of it. All right, now, I think we need one more. So let's do that again. I'm going to hit Shift-D, create another emitter. I'm going to come up here and click the number again to create a new particle system. And this one, I want it to be a bit denser. So I'm not going to have it spread out as much. I'm going to take the velocity on this one and drop it maybe by half. I'm also going to turn this down a bit just for fun. And let's turn it on. Yeah, it looks pretty great. Now I do feel like this system is going on too long now. So I'm going to take the lifetime back down to like 20. Oh, that's cool. We get this secondary spark because this lifetime's a bit longer. So I'll keep that at 30. Let's see what that looks like. Nice. All right, cool. Looking good. Now, naturally, the color's not right. So let's figure some of that out. I'm just going to pick one of these moments here. Actually, I want to just check something real quick. Don't know if that matters. All right, just finding a good view. And let's get this to work. Okay. Now, with the principled volume shader, color represents the color of your smoke. Okay. So we've got very little smoke in our scene, but I'll turn it way up so that the little bit that we do have, you can actually see. It can add definition to the explosion, and it can be nice. You can also change this to like, be some kind of crazy color, but it's always going to be kind of dark. So let's pop that density up to 20 to see what that looks like. It's pretty cool. Now, another neat thing that you can do with these is we can actually input different things into these points. We can use like a Voronoi, for example, or even better, let's use a noise. And we can grab a texture coordinate node. And it's going to grab the texture coordinates of the cube. So remember, this domain is a cube. So if I grab the object and I plug it into the vector, and I grab the factor and plug it into, let's say, the density maybe, and grab this here, and we get a color ramp, put them together here, and probably a math node too, because we'll need to increase it to see it. So let's grab a math node. Actually, it should be a vector math node because we have 3 values. And I want to go and, although it's black and white, so it doesn't matter. So a math node, pipe that in there, pipe that into density, switch this to multiply, and crank it up to like 2 or something. And then scale. This might be the wrong way to do this because maybe a bit too hard to see. Maybe I've got it in the wrong. If I plug it into black body intensity, should really start to see it. There we go. So this is a great way to add even more kind of dimension and texture to your explosion. I should probably re-explain it because I just smashed this down, didn't I? We're not actually going to need it though. I don't think we need it. Yeah, let's get rid of all this. Teach it properly. Let's see, what else do I want to do? We could change the tint. So we could make it like a blue thing, something. I think I'll keep it. Oh, that's right. We got to do Star Wars, which is like a whitish kind of explosion thing. Okay. All right. So, oops. 1,000. Now to begin to tweak the colors here, if we change the temperature, we can drop the temperature down, and you can see it's going to affect the overall color and also the overall brightness of this thing. It's basically that we're cooling off the explosion. Now we can tint our black body as well. So we could take this and tint it like a bit of a bluish color. It's going to mix with the native sort of fire red. Which isn't necessarily going to look good. Let's keep that like that. And how did I do this before, actually? I'm trying to remember. It's probably because our density is so far turned up. Just kind of create some nice definition though. I think that's probably all we need to do. Yeah, it's all right. Does that do anything? I think it does. Should I put a light in the scene just to make sure? Yeah, that's what I thought. light is what's going to cause it to. Pretty sure it's absorption color. That's no. Is it this? Yeah, that's it. So, yep, that's what I was looking for. All right, let's do it. Where's my lamp? Okay. Let me just restart the recording. And good. All right. Cool. So now another thing that's important is a lot of these things that are being calculated to get the look of this thing happening really depend upon the light in your scene. All right. Because a big part of a volume is how much it absorbs light, what it does with the light when it receives it. Right now, we don't have any lights in our scene. So we're not really getting an accurate picture of what's possible with how we can make this thing look. So if we hit Shift A, we can add in a light and a sunlight. And I'm just going to rotate it a little bit. If we turn on the volumetric shadows, we're going to get shadows within this thing, although it's a little hard to see. Could also probably make my world black now that I have a light in there. We can see it even clearer. Turn up the strength of this guy and maybe down the angle. Okay. So now we have a light in the scene. We can affect these things a little bit more. You can see that the color of our smoke is actually kind of pretty accurate to what it looks like here. So I could like darken it up and it's going to go dark on me. I could also take it and add some color to it. And you're going to really start seeing that color. Now this is where you could kind of get kind of cool with, you know, the different sort of space explosion stuff. What we can do is we could take the absorption color and we can turn it up as well and add in some wild color. So if I take this all the way up, for example, and make it like a teal or a green, you know, suddenly we've got this like green explosion thing, which looks really crazy. So like, you know, when the Death Star explodes and you get that kind of, you know, greenish, disgusting looking color. So if we drop that down to black, we can really get a lot of depth. That's nice. That looks kind of cool. All right, I'm going to switch my absorption color just down to, what do I want? I'll keep it kind of fiery for now. Now I've set my density to 200 and I've set my temperature to 1500. Again, temperature, the higher it goes, the brighter things get. And the density is just for the smoke itself. So, and I've made that smoke a bit dense so that we've got this kind of definition in the fire, which looks kind of nice. Now I could take this and let's see if I want to make it more. We need to head towards that that Star Warsy kind of look. So let's take it. To go kind of white with it, I think. Turn my saturation. It's kind of yellowish. If I go like a little bit blue. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. That looks like the way they look in Star Wars, I think. Keep that black, and I will turn it up to 700, possibly. Maybe it's too much. Come back down to 250. Okay. All right. So we've got our Star Warsy looking explosion, and we've got our white sparks. Everything's kind of looking really nice. Now, if you were to jump into cycles, I want to show you another really important thing that it's really good to know. If I switch over to cycles, shader to the render that you're working with. And the reason why it looks so gross here is because we're actually pumping these really crazy values. So at temperature at 1500, we've actually peaked past white. We've gone into super white, and there's no bloom in cycles out of the box. You've got to add it in compositing. And because of that, this is kind of what the colors really look like. I think if we were to go back to Eevee and turn off bloom, it's going to have a similar level of grossness. But anyways, they come in here and they go, all right, and I'm going to here and bring it in and whatever. I'm just now suddenly you go back to cycles, or you go back to Eevee, sorry, and you're playing around with the shader. Oh, weird! It's working today. It looks like it's losing. Let me try. Let's go to settings, stream, bitrate. Let's go 2800. And I'll try task manager. Let's see if network. Oh yeah, that's the problem. It's the render. Yeah. Yeah, it hates switching between renderers. Whenever I switch over to cycles, it starts using the CPU really intensely. I switched to the GPU, it'll get even worse. Just doing a stream while having it. I haven't quite figured out how to get the settings right. Anyways. Let me know if I'm back, everybody in chat. If we're all good, I'll keep going. If not, stay tuned for the real episode when it comes out. No streaming issues. It'll just work. Yeah, the playback on my end looks really bad in terms of what you guys are having to watch. Anyways, okay, so what I was trying to explain, using the attribute node. So there are times where you can use this attribute node to do some really cool stuff. But I've noticed that sometimes it's buggy, and the attribute node, when you're in Eevee, can actually cause your explosion to disappear for some reason, and it just doesn't work. So the way you get around that is you have to, when you switch back to Eevee, you've got to delete any attribute nodes you have in the scene. And then you need to just tweak something like the emission strength of your shader, and it should reappear. Okay, so if that is ever happening to you, and you're trying to go between cycles and Eevee and it's disappearing, that's the problem. It's the attribute node. Okay, so get rid of the attribute node and get your shader to work without it. It should be fine. So hopefully that'll get fixed in future editions of Blender, but that's just something I've noticed. Anyways, last thing I was going to say that's really cool is that we can pipe in different things into this to create even more variation, especially like in Eevee where, say we want to see a little more roughness on these edges, but we don't increase our voxel size and have a really long bake. What you can do is think about what's driving the color here, and it's the black body intensity. If I turn that off, it's going to disappear, right? So if we go over here, if we go down right here, we go to, let's see, let's grab a noise node. Yeah, stream it might be, let me check the settings real quick. Output. Hopefully that'll eventually catch up for you there. Just tweak that. So, okay, we got a noise texture. We can use that to drive the black body intensity. So I'm going to grab a color ramp right here, and I'll pipe the factor into the factor, and I'll pipe the color into the black body intensity. Then what I want to do is I'm going to get a texture coordinate node and stick it right here. And I'm going to use the, I think object mode is what I want. Now it's going to use the, remember we've got our domain is a cube. So it's using the texture coordinates of that cube on this. So now if I was to take my scale, and actually I'll just bring in these guys till we can see it. Yeah, there we go. So now you can see it's turning it off. And now it's behaving just like a material would, right? So if I change the scale of my noise texture, it's going to be affecting it. So what's cool is it's affecting it in 3D space, right? So you can actually do some pretty sick tricks. Like here, I'll show you real quick. Use the Voronoi shader and do the same thing with object, stick distance into the factor, right? And then watch this. If I take randomness down to 0, suddenly now it's like weird grid pattern in 3D space. Very cool. You could use this for like, I don't know, like I've tried to use it for like, I don't know, all kinds of stuff, like a holographic display. Like it's pretty cool because it moves with the explosion. Anyways, just a fun extra tip there for you. Plug that back up, delete that. So if we want to use this to affect the edges of our material, we can just go here and increase the scale and maybe the detail as well, and the roughness, bring up the roughness. It's going to make things really, really rough and patchy. And I'm just looking at the edges, right? I'm going, all right, yeah, it looks good. It looks pretty good. Now I want to get the center to kind of go back to good. So what I can do is I can grab a gradient node and switch it to spherical, which is a 3-dimensional shape. I can use the, I think I have to use generated for this one. If I duplicate my color ramp, plug the factor into the factor, and plug this into the black body intensity, so it unplugs my other system, I can have a look. Yeah, no, it is object that needs to be connected in. Now what I can do, you can see I've got this sphere now. I'm basically telling it that it's creating a 3D sphere in the middle of my cube. And it's using that to drive the black body intensity. So what I can do is I can actually do something like this. And then I can add these two together. So I can go math and stick that there, stick this here, boom. And now you can see we can add in more and more and more of this amazingness. Now that's pretty cool, but it's not perfect because you can see it's really breaking down at the edges there. So we should probably back this guy off a bit. Also try multiplying it. I don't think that would do it though, because that's gonna, yeah. Anyways, just adds a little of extra detail to your explosion. Can be cool. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that this fractal pattern that we have, this noise pattern, it's not going to be moving. So the explosion is going to be moving over it, basically. So you can really notice it when you're watching the full animation sometimes, that the noise is kind of staying the same. So what you want to do is you want to actually animate the noise a little bit with a mapping node to get it to expand. So anyways, in our case, I'm not really feeling like we need it. I think we're pretty good. Just trying to think if there's anything else I want to do to it. Nah, not really. So I'm just going to get rid of all that. Just wanted to show you that cool trick because, yeah, it's great. All right, now the last thing I want to do is show you real fast, like how do we then get this thing to work in our main scene? How are we going to import this over so we can use it? And this is a really cool trick. All right, if you thought you saw some cool tricks today, just wait. This is my favorite. So we got our explosion. We're happy with it. I'm going to take my little sphere particle. I'm going to move him way out of the way there so he's not causing any issues. I'm going to jump into my camera. I'm going to lock my camera to view. I'm going to zoom back out. Now, again, remember, now we're looking through our camera. We got to extend the draw distance of our camera. Otherwise, we're not going to see anything. So clip end, I'll just pop that way up to 10,000. And I'm going to find a good angle. I'm going to find a really cool angle on my explosion. There's a lot of cool things going on. That's a pretty nice angle. I like that. Yeah, cool. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go to where the explosion's pretty big. And I'm going to take my camera. Actually, I'm going to take my dimensions of my scene right here in the little printer tab thing. And I'm going to change this to, let's see, I'll go 1,000 by 1,000. Which is not a super high resolution, right? And the reason for that is, center it up, we're going to render this thing out as a texture. And we're going to apply it to a plane in our scene. So there we go. That looks pretty good. Just popping through frame by frame, making sure it's all kind of contained. We're going to lose some of those particles off the edge, but that's fine. Now let's find, where does it all disappear? All right, so it's all gone pretty much by frame 32. So I'll make frame 32 my final frame. And what I'll do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to turn off bloom. Okay, that's important. And the reason for that is you see with bloom, it's kind of blooming up. We're going to get this really crisp hard edge where we're cutting off our render if we do it this way. So I'm going to turn bloom off so it's just the explosion and it's just the particles, okay? We're going to add bloom in our final scene whenever we actually apply this simulation. Now we could go ahead and go back in and rebake this thing at a higher resolution and get an even more detailed simulation. But the thing is, it's going to happen so quick that we don't really need that. Okay, this is going to be kind of like just an explosion that we can use at any point. And the idea is we can go through and make a bunch of them. And so we've got a lot of different explosions we can use in our main scene. If we ever want to have an explosion where we're really close to the camera and the camera like flies through or around the explosion, we see the depth of it, that's when we want to actually bring the full simulation in. And I can show you how to do that as well. All right, so let's go ahead and save this scene, and I'm going to set up a render. I'm just going to stick it in the same directory that I've saved my project file, and I'm going to put it in a folder called explosion. And I'll do the backslash there. So now we're going to create a directory here called explosion, and then I'm going to name this explosion1. And then underscore there just so we can do the numbers for our image sequence. Perfect. Then last thing I need to do is I need to tick under film, I need to tick transparent, and that's going to make the background transparent. Great. Let's render it. Rendering. All right. I'm going to go open up. Let's see. I'll open. Which one do I want? Let's grab. Yeah, that one. Okay. So here we are in space, taking us back to our main project with the lasers that we were working on earlier with our little dude. And I'm going to create a plane, and I'm going to bring in this explosion texture that we just made. So I'm going to, let's see, I will turn this on, and I'm going to go Shift A and create a plane. And I'll just position it somewhere where we can see it. Just move it over here, let's say. I'll switch to top-down view and just zoom in on this guy here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the Material tab, and I'm going to hit New Material. I'm going to switch it to an emission material. And then go ahead and swing this out. Switch to Shader Editor. Switch to Rendered View so we can see. Why is it all blue? Oh, that's the smoke from the volumetrics. And what I'm going to do is, let's see, I'll switch to that mode. That'll show it to us. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go here and we're going to go to, let's see, input, and we want image. Where is it? Texture, sorry. Under texture, go image texture. Grab that. We're going to click open and just navigate to your explosion. Here's mine. So you can see here, it's numbered out all the different frames for us. I'm just going to click the first one and click open image. And then over here, I'm going to set this to, instead of single image, we're going to go image sequence. Now, I know that we had 32 frames. So the first one, I need to go frames. I need to type in 32. That tells it how many frames to actually pull in. And the start frame is frame 1. And I'm not going to go cyclic. I'll turn on auto refresh so it can refresh things for us. And I'm going to plug the color into the color of my emission. Now we're in Eevee, so what I need to do is I need to go here and I need to set my options. I need to go alpha, we'll go alpha blend and alpha hashed for shadow mode. And then if I go to frame 1, it'll load in the first frame of our material. And there it is. So now you can see this thing explodes. Now, because we did a 1000 by 1000 square image texture, whenever you create a plane in Blender, it's always a perfect square. So it fits perfectly on top here. So now we've got our explosions, which is super cool. Now what we can do is we can turn up the strength of this, and that's how we get our bloom back, okay? So we can just crank that right up. Now, it's not getting the alpha, so it's not getting the transparency. You can see it's just black here in the edges. So we just need to mix this with a another type of shader, the translucent, the transparent shader. So grab the transparent, and then we also need to grab a mix shader. Where are you? There you are. And grab that there, plug that in there, and then we use the alpha channel. So if you're not familiar, an alpha channel is basically the channel of an image that is transparent. So we take the transparency and plug it into the factor. So we're saying, well, it's flipped right now, so I'll just swap those nodes. So now this is going to be transparent. So wherever we stick it, it's going to just work in our scene. Now, the last thing that's really helpful is when you're moving your camera around, you want to have this thing actually pointed at your camera at all times for this effect to work. So we're going to add a constraint to it. So come over to Object Constraints, and I'll just make sure we actually have a camera in this scene. Yep, we do. Let me jump into that camera view so we can look through it. I'll lock my camera to view, and I'll find an angle that looks cool. Just center up my frame. All right, now I'll grab this thing and I'm going to click on Add Constraint here in the Constraints tab. And we're going to switch to Damped Track, and I'm going to select my camera. And I'm going to click Z because it's the Z direction of this object in local coordinates that I want to be using to point at the camera. So we're using the Z. You can, if you're not familiar, you can just click through all these until it looks right. That's the best way. Now, wherever this camera is, this plane is always going to point at us, no matter where we are, okay? Now I can grab it, and I can just like put it right up here. And now we got this cool explosion happening in our scene. Switch on rendered view. Turn that off. Turn that off. The stream is going to just crash now because I'm playing an Eevee. All right, so now all right, so now we got the explosion happening, but we're not having it at the right point. We want to be able to control when the explosion fires. So the last thing we'll do for that is over in our material settings in the shader editor. What we can do is we can use the offset. Now, offset is a very, very confusing number that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So if you go backwards on it, you'll notice that it starts to replay. But if you go forward, nothing happens, right? You're basically telling it what frame do you want to be using in how many frames do you want to offset your animation, right? Now, I don't know why offsetting it in the negative direction takes it back to the beginning frames. Whereas if you're at 0, it sits at the final frame 22, for example, here, which is the frame that we're at. I think it's just saying offset from your frame in your timeline. That's the gist of it. Anyways, what we can do with this, though, is we can say, all right, I'm going to go back to, let's see, I want frame 0, or frame 1, I mean. So that's going to be negative 21, right? So a frame before this. If I hit a keyframe right here, so I'm on frame 1, and then I go forward, I know there's 32 frames. So if I go forward 32 frames, so what is that, 22, oh, so 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 54. If I set that to 0 now and hit another keyframe, also just make sure these are, and then right click on and make sure they're set to the linear interpretation. You don't want to have Bezier because it's going to like speed up, slow down. And basically it means that now the explosion is going to happen manually. So we can do this. We can now speed up the explosion, make it happen faster, which is cool. We can slow it down. But that back, go back. There we go. Now if we grab these keyframes, wherever we drag them is where we're going to have the explosion. Actually, that's not correct. How did I do this? I think I have to do it. Maybe I've got to do it back at the beginning. At frame 1. Let's see. Offset. How does this work again? If I go 31, and then here I go down to I had this working yesterday. Sorry, stream. This is pretty annoying, this thing. Getting it to work right. Yesterday it was behaving quite differently. But I can see now what's going on is that it's using the frame. Let me delete these. Stop this as well. All right, so how does this work? If we clear keyframes, set 0. So I think all I have to do is just say, all right, 7, let's send it. All right, so it offsets it. Once we hit that point, it doesn't do it anymore. So does that mean what I should do is set that keyframe to 1 maybe? Let's try that. Set that to 1, hit I. Set, no, it's going to move. Maybe it needs to be -1. No, it still goes forward. I'll still be adding frames to it. And then it stops at 62. See you, Paul. Thanks for joining us. Sorry, it's gone a bit dull here at the end. So what's happening is it adds on, so it hits 62. So it's offset. And I can't keyframe these, can I? No. Maybe if I do cyclic, is that? Was that how I pulled this off? Let me check. Hang on. I'm gonna open up my other project. Where is it? Scenes. Where's my test? Test. There it is, explosion test. All right, I'll open that one up. Have a quick look. What time is it? 10:30. Okay, it's almost time to stop. All right. Now, this was my test. Did I get the thing to... Oh, did I not save my... Oh, yeah, no, I did. There it is, explosion texture test. That's what... Pull this up. All right, let's see how I did it here. All right, this was my test earlier. And how did I do my keyframes? Dope sheet. This is the plane. There it is. All right, if I switch back to the timeline, what did I do? I have my offset set to 1, start frame 1, frames 22, so that's all fine. Auto preset is off. Nothing else is going on. Offset 1. And then I get, so from 1, I jump to the last one. So I jump to the negative. And then I animate it manually. And then with the other plane, where's that one? Is that one animating? I don't think so. So then, oh, well, that's part of the problem. It's not even working. Is there a particle system on anything? Okay. What do I do with this one? Okay, so same thing. 1, -1, and then now I could move it anywhere. Yeah, I could move it anywhere. So what's the difference? What's the difference between that and what we've got? Let's see. So what we have, let me check. Maybe, do I have my image sequence number wrong? No, 32 frames. Yep. So we start at frame 1, frame we have 32, offsetting. So let's do what we did here. We offset by 1. Offset by 1, set that keyframe. And then the next keyframe is where I can go to the first frame, and that's where things are different. For some reason. Okay, so another thing is I'm off somewhere else. Let's try that. I'll just move this up to here, let's say. And one, 2, 3, 4. Got the exact same frame. Frame 3, 4. 3. Actually, what I want is the last frame. Okay, I'm going to turn cyclic off. Sorry, buddy. I'm just behaving oddly. Do I have some other keyframe at play? Okay, so if I take this and now I go forward 1, and then I offset it. So we got frame 1. And then I set another keyframe. And then go forward. So that effectively freezes it. So I could put that like back here. So now it's always frozen. Except now it's not freezing it. So it only freezes it if it happens after. Is that true? Well, this is weird. We got to figure it out. All right. Let's see. So we go up. So 33 plus 32 is 65. So come up here. And we go 0, 65. So come up here. And we go 0. Keyframe. And then grab all these guys, go linear. So there's my explosion. So it works here. But now if I move it, it's not going to work. Oh, wait, hang on. Just have to animate the offset to be backwards. Yeah. So it works there, right? If I drag it around, is it going to work still? Yeah, it doesn't work anymore. What do you think, chat? Am I missing something? If you want it at 32, keyframe the offset going from 1 to 32. So if I want the explosion at frame 32, keyframe the offset. Yeah, which is what's happening here. But then I guess we have to go the other way and keep it on the same. Do we have to do something crazy like that? So frame 31, if I get this to be frame 31, that's what's going to work. Wow, that's annoying. It's going to be a really easy way to do this. So if I drag it around, just adjust the offset to the current frame it's sitting at. Right, so I don't have to keyframe it then. So this is how you would do it if you were doing it the complete most ridiculous crazy way. Whereas we delete all these keyframes. And we do what Stake LP is saying. We just decide, hey, I want it on frame 50. So I go -50. Or what? There. And then still not fully getting it. I don't feel like our solution though is the right one. I feel like it works. I mean, it works, but let's see. So it goes 1, then the offset removes 1, leaving you with frame 1. If you want that to happen throughout the clip. I'm not fully understanding your explanation. It's a bit weird that causes it to no longer animate. Yeah, so that's not doing it. Basically what we need to do is, I think we may need to create a driver for this to get it to, it seems so over the top though. It just seems like, there'd be a simple way of doing it. All right. Well, anyways, what we figured out was if we take the offset and make it 1, what we can do is to have it reverse out to the point we want it. Now I'm thinking of how we can do this quicker, because I feel like that version of like keyframing it so that it's counting, the offset's counting backwards, just silly. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's weird because over here you can see that it works. We've got an explosion. I can just drag these keyframes around and it's just doing it. What's the difference? Oh, okay, cool, Steak. So thanks for your patience. Appreciate your explanation, mate. Let's try it. Let's try what you're saying. So we go here, the keyframe. So just keyframe the offset at frame 1. So we'll keyframe the offset at frame 1. And then we go to the frame we want it at. So let's say frame 40. And now we go and offset this to frame 1 there. So 39, hit a keyframe. And now the explosion is going to go. All right, that's a different behavior. So yeah, there we go. That's working. Yeah, cool. Gosh, that seems so. I don't know why that was so hard, so confusing. So now if I drag it, drag it around, it's not necessarily going to work, is it? Yeah, that's right, because it has to be. This has to be an offset that makes sense according to the frame that it's on, which is a little weird. Now I wonder why I got it to work with that other one. So this one, let's see, what's the difference? So this one, we don't have a keyframe at the start. And it is doing the same behavior. So it's playing, but I have my one keyframe just here as opposed to back here. So if I move it back here. Oh, that's cool. It explodes, reverses, and then explodes. That's great. Let me just check. Is the interpolation? Let's look at this in graph mode. Maybe that was the difference. It's weird. Stepped. Interpolate. Bezier. Interpolate. Linear. I guess that's just how it goes. Yeah, it works now, but very strange. It's probably doing a tutorial. You have to understand it. You have to explain it. So let's see. So we set this to a negative 20 and frame 68. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But by having this right there, it's going to show it twice because it runs through the frames. So yeah, if we really don't want it showing it, we need to count backwards. I need this to be frame 31. Set a keyframe. Is that right? No, it's not right. So the behavior then is this is keeping it on frame 1 the whole time. Now, if I look at the graph, What's the graph look like? All right, so it's linear, so that's fine. Let's go back to our timeline. Very weird. There is a way. There's a way to do this math. Yeah, there's a driver hack. You're right. Because you can get the current frame number. Yeah, it's like what you would do is you would take this, you would add a driver. Where's the driver? Oh, so it's because it's keyframed. We clear the keyframes, we can add a driver, right? No. Yeah. So I can add a driver, and then what I could say is we create a property. We need to create a property on this guy, on this material. Is there just a property? Can you create one? Properties, options, report, tool, item, texture mapping. See you 4K, thanks for joining us. Sorry, these kind of drag out a little bit towards the end. I think you could make a custom property in a material too, but I guess not. We don't really need it, I suppose, here. All right, so we need to go to, where is it? Where's our plane object? Here it is. So we would add the custom property here. So down here, custom properties, add, we'd call this frame start, and do the max, like a huge max. And default value 1 is fine. And then what we do is we come over here and we'd edit the driver. We'd add an input variable. We'd get a single property. We'd get it from a plane object. Type in the name of it. It's called frame start. And then we need to have another property from our scene. This scene. And the path is frame underscore current is what it's called. There you go. See 40 and 40. And then what we do is we come over here and we'll just call this one X, call this one Y. And we go so then the offset needs to be, I'm not sure what the math would look like. What do I need the math to do? We need to have the offset be basically opposite to what the frame is. Is that right? No, it's not quite right. So at frame 40, if I want this to be at frame 1, I need it to be at 40. If I'm here and I want it to be, it should be negative 20. So, but when we hit that, we want the offset to be I want the offset to be This is getting too complicated for a simple tutorial. I think I'll explain it with the reverse countdown probably, and then I can just save this one for another time. But still, it's really handy having this thing to working. So when it hits I'm going to do it with an if statement. Doesn't make sense. Do we have to though? I don't know what that expression looks like. If we take I know we can go y times -1. That'll always put the offset and reverse it. And then we can add 1. That's going to put it the right point. So now as we go through, it's always going to be sitting at frame 1. And then let's say we want frame 60 to be where our explosion starts. So see, I would enter that here. And I need another property. I need the number of frames. This Python is image user frame duration. I could just stick it in there as well, it'd be easier. The trick is how would I trigger it? I would need to take. Yeah, this is going to be too complicated to explain in a tutorial because I'm going to teach through too much. I can't simplify it unless here's a thought. What if we just add x? So now all we have to do is go, all right, I want it to start here. So I'll set a keyframe there. I'll go forward 65 frames. 64 frames. And then type in 64. Or is it 32? Doesn't seem right. You can also build in a clamp feature. So now let's see, 57 plus 65. We don't have 65 frames, we only have 32 frames. Where did that go to 65 for? So 57 plus 80, what, like 99. Oh, thanks, James. Appreciate it, mate. Thanks for popping in. We're at the tail end of doing some explosions, and what we're doing right now is we're trying to take the texture of the explosion, stick it onto a plane, and have it in Eevee as just a plain texture, which is working fine, but we're just trying to get the offset to work, and it's just an absolute nightmare. So just about figured out a workaround, I think, that we can teach, but just trying to figure out a simple solution that's easy to talk about. Now we have lost the functionality of our system here. Why? So at frame 57, what we should be is, let's delete this for a second, and let's go. Yeah, the new Send Unreal plugin's amazing. They were like just talking about it as I was finished that series. Such a time saver. They're really trying to get them to work together well, which is awesome. Why is that not working? I'm gonna copy as a new driver and delete that. There we go. So when we're on frame 32, so what is it? Frame 1. So 1, what is that? Doesn't make any sense. If we have 32 frames and we offset, why is it on frame 57? And we get it sort of frame. Let's see. All right, 19. So that's correct. It's the number reversed plus 1. 44 should be negative 43, but it's not. Do we have, how many frames do we have in this? Have I done that wrong? No, yeah, 32 frames. It's weird that we got it to work with it doubled. That doesn't make any sense. So negative 31 when you're at frame 44. What? Man, Blender's doing my head in today. Live. Oh man, I thought I had this sorted. It worked so easily in my my little setup earlier, but this is just nuts. Why would frame 44 with an offset of negative 1 give me frame 1? Because 31 minus 44 is not. It doesn't make any sense. But it works on the whole numbers, doesn't it? Or is it doing that thing where it's... All right, so once it passes... Yeah, it is, James. It's painful at times. But it's good. By the way, if anyone doesn't know, on the Patreon, I post all these up. So after I finish these live streams, I take it down from YouTube and I go away and edit the video and come back with the video for the week. But I put the full unedited thing up on the Patreon. So everybody, I think it's available from the lowest tier. So everyone there, if you ever wanted to like watch these, all of them, got hours of pain. Lovely viewing, entertainment. All right, now this is just not making any sense to me. All right, so it goes to frame. So when we hit frame 32, that's when the offset stops working for us, and it just freezes on frame 1. If I come back, all right. So what offset 0? And we go. Oh, cool, James. Welcome. I never knew who is actually on the Patreon, who's not, because everyone's name's different across every platform. Your name might be the same. I don't know. But I used to write a personal message to everybody who joined. I haven't done that in a while. just been busy. Been busy with contract work. It's been nuts. But thank you very much for joining the Patreon. That means a lot. I hope you find it fun. If you ever have any feedback about the Patreon too, just let me know. If you have any ideas or no data. Why is the stream dead? So annoying. Come back. Nothing's doing anything. All right, Steak. Just take the frame start you created. Paste driver. And then we're going to edit this driver. All right, so frame offset. Oh, that's interesting. Why did that? Anyways, all right. Okay, let's do this again. Property of frame start. And let's add it to so let's see, so var -1 will offset that. Now it's going to be pink, and it just stops at frame 44. It's because it depends upon the frame number as well. So we go past the frame number, it's just going to stop working altogether. What if we add the frame number? So let's grab scene again. Our scene. Oh, I lost that. Oops. Plane. Frame start. Scene. Frame current. X. Y. Minus plus X. All right, I'll keep it growing. So if I do the current frame, X, and then what I need to do is then subtract that from, so I took the current frame, and then if we subtract it by 32, does that do anything? It's going to put me at frame 51, which is not. So let's take the so this is what we had before. This will work for everything before frame 32. So we'll automatically offset for us till we hit 32. And then what happens is it's going to go into the negative. Why is that? It's because this is no longer going up anymore. Yeah, this is too confusing. There's a way to do it, but if I do this in the tutorial, I thought if I could just do a simple equation that's easy to explain. I think we have to do this manually. Well, if anybody ever comes across an easy expression for that or a simpler way of doing it, I'd love to know. So then in essence, what we have to do is set a nonsensical keyframe offset of 1 here, or even 0. And then go forward to wherever we want it to start. So say frame 50. And we need to, no, we should go to frame 32 and offset this so that it's at the same frame number. So frame 1, right? Yep, frame 1. That's right. And then I really got to turn that off. It's really screwing me up. Preferences, animation, constant. I'm going to be Bezier. It's my standard. I'm going to make sure that's linear. So yeah, that'll freeze it indefinitely. So once we've frozen it indefinitely, what we can do then is decide whatever frame we want it to turn on at. So if I want it to explode here, let's say I can set a keyframe right there, go to the next keyframe, and I can come forward 32 frames. So go to 82, set that to 0. And now that's going to go off whenever I want it to. And I can grab this group and put it wherever I want. And I can grab this group and move it like that to speed it up if I want it. Yeah. Well, that was crazy. Now the only question is what happens if you want it to take place in this zone. You would need to so really you would need to take the frame, the total number of frames in your image sequence. You would need to take the current frame and you would need to subtract the current frame -1 or +1 from the value to get the correct offset number. But then when you hit the frame number, it's going to stop. So you don't need to be subtracting anymore. Yeah, I'd have to get a pen and paper to figure out the math on that one. I'm sure it's fairly straightforward, but so that's what you have to do. You got to get that thing to count backwards because it's always animating. So to refresh, do anything. I think that's important. All right. Okay, let's land this thing. I'm going to record this last bit. So let's delete all these keyframes. Set that offset back to 0. make this a little bit bigger for everybody. Turn that off. All right. Okay, cool. I'm going to start recording again, and we're going to finish the episode because it's been half a day, half a work day. Jeez. All right. Okay, so now that we have our explosion happening, we need to figure out how to make it go off when we want it to go off. So right now it starts automatically when our scene starts. When we're using an image sequence, it'll start playing right away from the beginning. So you can see right here, it tells you what frame it's showing you. So it's showing us frame 4. So I go forward to 5, it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's counting up with our frames. But we want to offset that. We need to use the frame offset in order to make it work. Now the frame offset is very confusing and can really mess you over. So let me show you how to do it. All right, so you would intuitively think, all right, if I want this thing to start at frame 21 as opposed to frame 0, I'm just going to back this off until it's at frame 1 here, and that should be great. But now you can see it's counting backwards. And the problem with counting backwards is it's going to load in this purple ugliness. And then you'll notice we're getting some really weird behavior. It's going to actually freeze and stop. So yeah, it's pretty confusing. Anyways, what we have to do is basically we have to animate the offset in 2 different ways. First thing we got to do is come here to frame 1 and we're going to set a keyframe, right? So our offset, we're going to have offset of 0 because we want it to be on frame 1 when we're at frame 1, okay? Now we've got 32 frames in our image sequence. So I need to go to frame 32. So here we go, frame 32. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate my offset backwards. So I'm going to rotate it back till this goes back to frame 1 again, okay? And I'll hit I to set another keyframe. Now you'll see that, and I'm going to right click on it as well and set the interpolation to linear just so it doesn't slow up and speed down, slow up, so it doesn't speed up and slow down. So now when I press play, it's just going to sit at the first frame of our image sequence, which you can see there is that beginning of our explosion. So basically animating this offset to offset the frame. Once it gets past frame 32 though, you can see it's just going to hold. And at this point, basically what we can do is we can decide whenever we want the explosion to happen. So if we want it to happen like, let's say frame 45, I'll give myself a longer timeline. I can come to frame 45, I can set a new keyframe for my offset, and I can come forward 32 frames. So 44 plus 32 is 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 4, 5, 6, so 76 right up here. And then I can just bring this up until I get to the final frame of my sequence, 32, and set another keyframe. And now I can right click on that and make it linear as well. So now nothing's going to happen until I get here, and then it's going to play. Now the problem with this is I can't just grab these keyframes. So I can't just go like this and like grab this group and move it around, because you can see we're starting to get weird behavior. It's playing backwards, it's playing forwards, it's all over the shop. However, if I grab this keyframe and drag it right here, now I'm just experimenting, because I keep thinking in my head, there's got to be a way. There's not. That's kind of annoying. Gosh, I wish there was a simpler way to teach this. And what happens if I want it to happen earlier though? Like what if I go here and I'm like, delete these keyframes, grab these guys, bring them over. It's not gonna work, is it? Yeah. Gosh, this is a really bad system. You'd think this would be a simple process, you know? Upset. Anyways, I'll stop whinging. So now you've got some flexibility. You can move these keyframes, these final two keyframes around, and anywhere in your scene where you place them, you're going to be able to have the explosion happen again. Now, if you want to have multiple explosions, let's take this plane, it's Shift-D to duplicate. I'm going to scale it down, maybe rotate it, put it over here. And I want this one to be offset a little bit. If I move these keyframes, I'm moving the keyframes from both of these guys, okay? Now, usually we would update the material, and we do need to update the material to make this change, but I'll just show you. If I was to move these keyframes, you could see they're both being affected by it, right? So I'll put them back. Oh, now they're behaving weird again, are they? No, they're fine. Okay, so in order to offset one of these, I need to take this material and I need to click +1 there or just click the number to make it a new material. And now over here, I need to actually make this a new material as well. You can see we also have a user number next to the image sequence. So it's saying 2 materials are using this image sequence. So I click there, and now this is a fresh image sequence. And now I can make the change. So I go right here, grab this, and I can move it just a little bit. And now what you're going to see is we'll have the first explosion and then the second explosion go off. So they have this nice double effect, which can be really nice. A cool way to have a lot of different things happening that look a little bit different. So you can layer these up. Last thing that's probably worthwhile doing as well is kind of have this uniform brightness, which sort of kills it a little bit in terms of the realism. So what I would do is I would actually use something here to, I'd affect the strength probably with the color. So I'd go in here and grab a math node and grab vector math, pipe the color in here, and then pipe this vector in. What would I do? Well, strength is not really, actually, yeah, color ramp it. Bring this in here, and then pipe this up to the strength. And then what I do is I could play around with these numbers, and I could take this one and crank it way up. See, like make it a 5 by vibrancy. Set that to ease. And now I can affect the brightness a little bit more. And that just gives you a bit more freedom to flex, just shape your explosion and shape the way it looks. It's a bit nicer that way. I'll hide the other plane so you can see it. There we go. So you can see we get way more variation now in this explosion. And it looks a lot nicer. You're actually getting the different blast highlights really well. Sweet. All right, cool. So hopefully that gave you a lot of really great ideas about what you can do with explosions. Hopefully it really kind of brought the whole mystery of using MantaFlow and creating dynamics in Blender and simplified it a little bit for you. So you've got a really good groundwork to begin to experiment yourself and try things out. Now, the idea with this is to make a couple of different explosions, different types, different sizes, different color variations, maybe render these all out as image sequences, and then we'll use those in our actual project and layer them up. We might have a few like full explosions in the project itself, depending on the size and what we need to have it interact with. Like if we've got, asteroid pieces and stuff we need to do, we could do it that way. But this is a great start for us to go ahead and begin to flesh out how to put these kinds of things into our scene. So I hope you learned a lot. I hope you had a lot of fun with this tutorial. And I hope that you're continuing to expand your skills as we go through this series. I will catch you in the next episode. Until then, don't forget to check out the Patreon, check out the Blender Market, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos and you want to see more. I will keep them coming. All right. Thanks again for watching, and I will catch you later. Bye. All right. That was my goodbye for the stream, for the record. Anyways, so that was a really long, drawn-out ending. Sorry to everybody. I don't know how we got sucked down that rabbit hole, but man, oh man, that was painful. At least we got a cool explosion in the end. That looks kind of nice. I'm pretty happy with this. Make it big. We can make better explosions. That one's not like the best explosion ever, but still, they're pretty sick. Laying them up like that. They have different color variations and stuff, Try and get a nice freeze frame there for us. That's a bit funny. There we go. Looks pretty good. I like it. Anyways. Oh, I should stop. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a lot of fun. Anybody have any final questions before we wrap things up? Sorry for the stream difficulties. Hope you enjoyed that. With some cool tips, really cool things that we went through. I thought we covered some really nice territory. But yeah, I look forward to sharing the final episode with you. Hope you get it up. Hope to get it up soon. After we get this done, we're pretty much going to, I think, push forward with animating shots. So that should be a good time. Anyways, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you had a good time. Hope you learned some things. And yeah, thank you for helping me pass the time. All right. I will. I'll catch you in the next live stream, next record. Hopefully, do a few more next week, and get back onto our